And joining me in studio after a week hiatus, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. First of all, welcome back.
Well, thanks. It's good to be here. I got out my duck hunting waders and I slogged down my lane and through the water into the vehicle I stashed on the other side of the neighbor's house, and here we are.
That area of Buell and West is really, I mean, yesterday I guess was the worst of it. And it started to dry out a little bit, but there was a lot of, we had River Road, a bridge is out.
Yep,
You've got, you had some areas, oh gosh, there was one area that the bridge was closed yesterday, I think because the water was over it.
yep.
And then your driveway alone.
My driveway is bad. I'm gonna have to spend some money on it, and it's got like little Grand Canyons running through it now. And drove through it in my old Scout, and it just swallowed the tires up. But I live off of Clear Lakes, and I right above me is a big hole that's forming in the road, and then right below me, down in the canyon, the road's all eroded away. So I get detoured clear around and have to promise that I'm only gonna go to my house, and that's it. And it's a mess.
By the time, well, it'll dry out a little this weekend with sun and some cold nights, but if we end up having some of that snow melt from the mountains come quick, fast and furious, it's going to impact everybody in the river basin.
Well, yeah, and I was supposed to have a class this Saturday, and I do the classroom portion at my house, so I rearranged that. I can't send people down there because they're going to get stuck if they can even. Well, cars can't make it through at all right now, and so I went ahead and was going to have the classroom portion at the range where I do the shooting. I get a call from the law enforcement officer yesterday morning that does my part of the class or his part of the class for me, and he goes, "You're not having a class Saturday," and I said, "Why not?" The range had 6 inches of water up to
Oh,
the front door, all the way
oh
around
my,
it.
oh
So
my.
the time I got there, it had receded. I walked into the shooting range portion, and there's like 4 inches of standing water. It's just a big concrete swimming pool. So I got a hold of everybody last night, and I'll put a sign on the door as well. I put it on my Facebook page that we have to reschedule class. I'm going to go over and do cleanup detail tomorrow, and try to sump it all out of there and clean up the dirt, and then we'll get one rescheduled, and I will let everybody know. I apologize, but man, you can't win with Mother Nature.
You know, and this is the time to buy stocks in gravel because a lot of places that have been washed out are going to need to be filled back in and soon.
Oh yeah, it's half the parking lot over there at the gun club is just missing. It's just all mud now. It took the gravel and pushed it down Deep Creek.
Well, you sent me a great link last night talking about classes and firearms and the like. First of all, we should point out you're an avid hunter.
Right? Yeah, I hunt as much as I can. I take my kids out. I try to combine classes and hunting all at the same time. Gets a little. I get really busy in the fall.
The government, one of the things about the change in government in Washington, and we're looking, I think, really nationwide. Already, the states were sort of moving this direction where we're seeing a lot more freedom and availability in what we can use in just in our daily lives and firearms. We're not the only state now. We were like among the first states to go with this permitless carry, but I think North Dakota is going to follow our lead. Other people
Right.
are getting on
hmm
board. But when it comes to hunting, what you can actually use with hunting, the door is being opened quite a bit,
Well,
considerably.
yeah, and you're referring to the article where the ATF came out and made a whole bunch of statements, and one of the things that they said is they came out actually and said AK-47s and AR-15s, obviously in semi-automatic, style, are not assault weapons. They're not assault rifles. They are used more and more for hunting, and
Hmm.
that's fine, and that's a worthy cause for them. In Idaho, I mean, you can use an AR-15 to go hunting, obviously in the semi-automatic mode. But people would look at that and they try to take them away, and we say, "Man, this is America's most popular sporting rifle. It's used for shooting at the range. It's used for competition. It's used for hunting. It's used for hunting. It's not an assault rifle. It's used for hunting." And they actually finally came out with that statement and said they agree with that, and that's what they've stated. They've done some really cool stuff too in that statement. Now, these aren't legalized now, but they also came out for legalization of suppressors and getting rid of the tax stamp and a lot of other things. It's a pretty neat deal to see from the ATF. Now, I'm not quite sure why they're doing this. I think maybe it's because they know up above that the range are going to be loosened a little bit. Maybe they can come out and say what they really feel. I'm not sure. Maybe you have more insight into that than I do, but
This morning, I got a text message from a friend. He's retired from law enforcement, and he mentioned he has 32 firearms of his own, and some of those are obviously pistols, some probably rifles, some maybe a couple of shotguns. But most people, especially if you live in a rural area like you do, where you hunt and you make sure you have home defense, it's not a bad idea to have that sort of array, that arsenal where you maybe have a few, maybe a couple of pistols, maybe a couple of revolvers,
Right.
maybe a couple of rifles, maybe a shotgun.
Yep, every gun has a purpose, man. You know, you can clear a house really nicely with a shotgun, and you can take it out on the weekends and shoot ducks with it. Revolvers are fun to shoot. You can compete with revolvers. They're a good fail-safe. You pull the trigger, the revolver's going to go bang, bang, bang. It's typically not going to jam up. And then there's semi-automatics, handguns. You can hold more ammunition with them. You can train with them really well. They're fun to shoot. They have their place as well. A lot of the semi-autos, have a place in concealed carry, obviously. The revolvers can do the same thing. You got rifles for hunting. You got 22 rifles for shooting jackrabbits. 22 rifles for letting your kids shoot. You have the AR-15 for running using in a three-gun competition, for long range shooting, for varmint shooting, for letting your kids shoot, for home defense. I mean, yeah, it does have a wide array. Get as many as you can and buy a lot of safes. I mean, that's the way I see it.
We have a caller with us. And caller, is it coming up on 9:13? We've got 44 right now. Caller, you're on top story. And of course, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense in studio with us. Go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. Todd, I thank you for your idea for a Christmas gift. It was a hit with my son-in-law.
Awesome.
I think the bastardization of wording gets really out of hand. Calling things assault rifles. AR is not assault rifle. It's armor light rifles.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's a hard deal. And how do we get out of this? And how do we stop that terminology? Assault is assault. Terrorism is terrorism. Doesn't matter what nationality or anything that comes out of it. Those words have specific meaning. I built a AR for my daughter for Christmas. She loves it. She just texted me yesterday, wanting me to build a saddle scabbard for it with a 5-round magazine, so she can use it to go hunt.
Modern day cowboy. I love it.
So I don't know how we get rid of that wording though.
I think it's all about education. It's all about, I hear lots and lots of people who are gun nuts, who like to, go out and shoot a lot, and they will use these same words that the media uses. They will say, "Yeah, I'm going to go out and buy an assault rifle." You know better than that. Don't fall into that. Don't. The media calls it an assault rifle. They want to draw attention to that the assault rifle. They want to draw attention to that phrase. Don't use it. We need to be above that. We need to call it like it is. That's an Armalite rifle. Correct people. I do all the time. It's the same way when people have a semi-automatic handgun and they say, "Yeah, I'm going to load my clip." It's not a clip. That is a magazine. We got to change the wording. We got to correct it. We got to correct people. We have to use the correct terminology ourselves. That's how you
A
educate
clip
people.
is what you put on a tie.
Yeah, or in your hair. And they did actually have what they call little stripper clips, and you use those in your rifles and some different things like that. But in handgun, they're magazines.
And I've fallen into that trap too because over the years I would interview so many politicians and the like, and you just hear those words used over and over and over again, and then you find yourself and that's the point.
That's what they want to happen. They've
Right,
achieved it.
right, and so I've caught myself a few times,
Yep.
even on this program, starting to say that, and they're gonna stand back and say, "Whoa, wait a minute here."
Well, and it goes from assault rifle to when that was going over and people kind of caught on to that. Then it was black guns. Anything black was evil, was horrible. A black gun, that means it's metal, it's coated, it's going to
Yeah.
last a lot longer, and not get scratched up. That's pretty much all it means. It's
Steven Crowder, who he has a radio show called Louder with Crowder, which I guess is syndicated in some parts of the country. I think I told this story on the show one time. He
You
went
did.
out and they put up like a tent at a like a festival in some small town,
Hmm.
and then they would put out stuff with wooden stocks that looked like your grandfather's old gun, and then they would put out the black guns, and they would say to people, which one of these is dangerous and which one isn't, and people would say, oh, the wooden one's not dangerous, but the black gun is, and again, the firepower is basically the same from one to the other.
Well, exactly. And while you're telling me that story, I'm thinking of look what they're doing in schools. You can't even make a finger gun. A little kid bites a Pop Tart into the shape of a gun, and oh my gosh, it's bad, it's bad. What are they doing there? They're brainwashing the kids. They're trying to teach them that all guns are bad. Anything that looks like a firearm is bad. They get them when they're young. You get them when they're young, you're good to go. You got a bunch of voters.
But these are some of these people who are making these decisions of which gun is more dangerous and which one isn't. were reasonably intelligent people. I mean, obviously, who were being stopped and
Hmm.
asked the question.
It's just what they're hit with every single day in the media. Every shooter he had an assault rifle. It was an assault rifle. It must be an assault rifle. That was before they even would look and see what firearm the guy even had. It must have been an AR-15. It must have been an assault rifle. Exactly. I mean, we've all heard it.
Well, this is when we come down to training people, and you do work with kids too.
Hmm.
Uh, if you train people young, and you've brought it up, if you have that healthy respect for firearms, and I brought up the subject. My dad, I brought this up before, told me one time to get something out of his sock drawer, and when I got into his bedroom, there were two top drawers, and I opened one and it had socks, but I opened that second, the first one I opened,
Hmm.
it had a pistol in there. I just simply closed it, grabbed the socks, and walked away. And then there was always the pistol he had in his glove compartment. I never at any point had a desire. And look, my brother and I were raised playing with toy guns.
Hmm.
I mean, we spent more time playing with toy guns than Tonka trucks, and so and that was basically all the toys we had. But the fact of the matter is, just I don't ever recall having a desire just to pick up an actual firearm and use it as a toy.
Well, you were raised around them. You knew of them. That's just what you should do with kids. Raise them around firearms. Let them handle them safely, responsibly. Supervise them. Show them what they can do. Let them shoot them at the right age, whatever you deem that might be, and then let them make the choice later on. Okay, if you kill the curiosity, then they're not going to run look for it as soon as you go. Well, let's go look at this thing I'm not supposed to touch. And I liken it to. I was just thinking about my oldest daughter. I like to hunt. Most of my kids like to hunt. They've all hunted. They've all killed something at one point or another, except for my 3-year-old, and he's getting there. But my oldest daughter, she went out. She wanted to hunt. She took her hunter safety. We lived in Kansas at the time. She went out. She shot a whitetail. No big deal. Dad dragged it out. We put it in the freezer. We ate it. You know what? She's not against hunting, but she's never had any desire to go back. But you know what? She's educated. She was able to make that choice on her own with the facts, not because the media pushed something into her head that guns were bad or hunting was bad.
By the way, my buddy says, "You're making me a star every day." When I mentioned his 32 firearms, he says, "Most weapons are hidden in gun hide frames and everyday house items. A Derringer and cereal box, mini 9mm and trash bag box, even furniture made to hide guns."
You got any in the freezer? That's what we want to know right there. I was watching an old episode of Hawaii Five-O, and the guy pulled out a 1911 out of the freezer, and I was like, "That's cool."
Yeah, that'd be a little cold,
Hey, it worked.
cold steel.
Yeah.
And I think back to when we were kids growing up, and I was not there for the first run of Lone Ranger and Bill Hickok, but I got to see all of those programs and reruns, and we all wanted to be like them. The thing is, it wasn't turning us into vicious killers. We were emulating heroes, good people who
Right.
we saw, and wholesome heroes. We've got a short break coming up in just a moment. Uh, Maybe we can get Patrick to chime in on the air today after the break, since
That'd be cool.
he talk a little bit about how you can store these things around the home. 9:20 right now. We've got 42. Todd Eccles joining us from Patriot Defense. Bill, he'll tell us a little bit more too about how you can get in touch with him in just a moment. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. Well, this is perfect.
There you go.
Todd Eccles in studio with us from Patriot Defense. It's coming up on 9:22 and we're at 44. And I just want to remind people we're going to be back below freezing again in the next couple of overnights before we have another warm up again next week. And just a reminder, if you're having issues with the furnace, you need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric. And at Ramsey Heating and Electric, they'll come out and they'll get the job done right and make sure it's done the first time. Problem-free cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. You can call them at 678-0459. That's 678-0459, Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. Todd also has a phone number he wants to give out today. We should point out it's a Kansas prefix
Yes.
because, of course, you spent a few years living in Kansas before you decided to come back to.
And I just like to mess with people.
Yeah.
No, you can call me. You can text me. Area code 620-794-6223. I think I'm getting the hang of throwing that number out there slowly.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know when my next class is going to be yet. I need to go meet with the guys at the range, and then I'll have that. Hopefully, I'll know that those dates by the next show. and I'll post it on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook too under Patriot Defense. I constantly update that, and I post pictures. The flooded range is on there. You guys can jump on there and take a look at those pictures, and you can see what I'm talking about. Um, you can catch me there, call me, text me, message me, whatever.
After people go through the class, I was talking to one of my coworkers about this the other day because he practices on a regular basis at a range. The class obviously allows you to you learn some legal issues,
Hmm.
you know, your liability, in other words, and
Sure.
some of those things. You go through the class, but like everything else, people get really good at things. I was watching Tom Brady play football the other night, and even when his team was way behind, he came out and he just basically went through the business. He didn't get terribly emotional, and he brought his team back, and they won. He does that because he's been there before, and that's the key with practice. Because then you because you could take the course,
Yep.
and then you could never practice for 2 years, and all of a sudden you come up to an instance where you may need your pistol and
Yep.
or your revolver, whatever you're using for home defense, or your own defense on the street, and all of a sudden you don't have that ability. Where if you were to do it every week, it gives you that feel for it.
Yeah, you want to develop what you're getting at there is you want to develop that muscle memory. You want to know how that gun works. You want to remember how it works. You want to practice everything. Grip, stance, sight picture, sight alignment, all that stuff. You want to trigger press. You want to develop all that. And the only way you're going to do that is by training, taking classes, or going out and just shooting. I tell everyone, man, some people can't afford to go out and shoot 100 rounds a month, but you should go out every month, 10 rounds, 5 rounds, even something. Be familiar with that gun, know how it works, make sure the gun's in working order. Because even if you cram it in your holster and carry it around, and you never shoot it. You know what? Lint and stuff gets built up in there, and that can cause a lot of problems. Coming from a guy who doesn't like to clean his guns, I can verify that. Um, but go out there and you need to develop that. You need to have that muscle memory. You're carrying a handgun to possibly save your life or the life of your loved ones. So you want to be able to draw that. It needs to be an extension of your hand. You don't need to draw it or pick it up off your nightstand and go, "Oh, is this the gun that has a safety on it, or did I load this? I mean, I can't remember the last time I loaded this. Do I even have the slide rack?" You need to be able to pick it up and use it. Know how to use it. It needs to feel so familiar in your hand that you don't even have to think about it. You just automatically know how to do it. Now, I'm not a football guy, but you mentioned Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I bet you give him a football, the first thing he wants to do is just rear back and throw it, and that's natural to him.
Right.
That's what you want this handgun to become, natural. If you're gonna depend on it, it needs to be natural to you. It needs to feel natural, and you're able to pick it up and shoot it without thinking about it.
Now, Brady hunts too, by the way, along with Mike Trout, the baseball player. I think the two of them were seen together hunting not long ago, but maybe it was somebody else. I'm not as big a football guy as I should be, I guess.
He eats clean too, by the way.
Yeah.
I saw that.
The There was a movie I was watching the other day. It was a James Bond movie called Spectre, and Bond's trying to teach his girlfriend firearms,
Mhm.
and safety and all. And he has a 226, right? P226,
Mhm.
which, from what I've read, is a beautiful weapon. It's a
Mhm.
SIG, and he hands it to her, and immediately sits down and takes it apart. And he says, "Oh, I see you're familiar with firearms." So it's more than just about shooting, because it's also about, you got to keep it clean. You got to know how to, and with a slide, everything else that you've got to have because you've got to have a way of doing that that's proper too as well.
Yeah, you need to when you're mitigating the handgun, when you need to do it safely. So obviously you need to know your basic safety things, but you need to know how to run the slide. You need to know how to run the safety if there's one on there. You need to know how to drop the magazine, lock the slide. You need to know how to do all that and do it safely so you're not pointing the gun at yourself, not pointing the gun at others who don't need the gun pointed at them. And you got to be able to do it too, because you got the handgun in one hand, you got your other hand over here that's running the gun. You don't need to be putting your hand in front of the muzzle and muzzling yourself. Does that make sense?
Right.
Put your left hand. You need to do it smoothly and quickly and know what you're doing and know it enough that I was at the gun store the other day looking at some guns. I was down there at D&B Supply. They're showing me some of the new guns that they had down there, and the guy he'd get it out of the case, he'd clear it, he dropped the magazine, he'd clear the gun, he put the magazine back in and hand it to me. I'd look at it and feel the trigger and do everything that he wanted me to do, and then before I handed it back to him, I'd drop the magazine, I'd lock the slide back and hand it to him. That's a proper way of doing that. That's what you should do when you hand a handgun to someone, to show them that it's unloaded, and then when you receive it, do the same thing before you start pulling the trigger. It's just a double check of a double check of a double check is all it is. You need to know that. You need to understand that. You need to know how to do that.
Mentioning my friend Patrick, and of course he joked that he does have. He sent me a text. He does have one in the freezer and one in the refrigerator.
Awesome.
But he sent me this, and maybe we can expand on this too a little bit. We're getting near the break right now. We're about a minute away. But he says, always, and this comes from his wife. She's a lawyer, as I was telling you during the
Hmm.
break. Always document your training logbook or new apps available to do that. And he said it covers it covers you better if you happen to be in a moment where you need to use it.
Exactly. I've heard that before. I took a class from Asad Ayub, took his Mag 40 class, and he goes into that extensively. And he gives you a whole packet. And I can't exactly remember what he said. You go through this packet, you take the test. He gives you this everything you've done. You put it in this thing, and you have to mail it to yourself. And don't open it and put it in your safe. So if you ever, when you take his class, if you ever get into a situation where you have to use your handgun for self-defense, they can get that. They can, date it, have it dated. They can open it, they can look at it, and they can say, okay, well, he learned this, this, and this. This is what kind of training he had through this class. And if you take that class, he'll even come represent you.
Well, want to take a short break, but want to mention Todd Eccles is in studio with us, and we'll take some of your questions and comments in the next half hour as well. Right now, we're at 42, 9:30 on Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com, and plenty more on the way. Todd Eccles is actually planning to launch a podcast dealing with training and firearms, and he's getting pretty close to launch date. It's 9:34. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story today on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. We're at 42. Some of these podcasts, which end up as YouTube videos, because you can do them live,
Right.
but then they can become YouTube videos. We've talked about Hickok before because his what he does is he basically picks a firearm, and then because he's not endorsing anything, but he picks a firearm, and the videos on YouTube are great because he's got his own range out back,
Hmm.
and so he'll discuss what he has, and then what they'll do is he'll do some target shooting to show you how it works. And it's fun to watch. Just but he's entertaining as well,
Yep.
but you learn something from it. What you're looking to do is something very similar, I think, but you're not going to necessarily be out actually doing anything on the range.
Not at first.
Right, right.
Not at first, and it may evolve into that. I've kind of thought ahead a little bit, but I got to take this one step at a time. Um, I've done radio shows before a long, long time ago. I mean, I'm no professional, but I'm not.
You worked in this building at one time.
I did years ago. Sunday mornings on KZJ. It was great, but I'm no stranger to the microphone. But I want to start this podcast. I want to start it small and kind of see how it goes. And I want local stuff. I want to interview local people, local holster makers. I've got a guy that might be engraving my Glock here one of these days. If that goes well, which it should, I may interview him. I'll probably talk about him on the show. Who knows? Maybe I'll come interview you, Bill. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. We'll turn the tables. But
I
I want to talk.
One-eyed gunman.
Yeah, there you go. But I want to do that, and I have a lot of opinions that differ from a lot of your basic mainstream opinions in the gun community, and I think the podcast would be the perfect place to let some of those opinions loose and let people know what I think. I, just it's my I don't know, it's hard to explain. Just my own little pedestal, I guess. I'd like to get that going in a few weeks, and I keep saying that. I've got a few kind of short little episodes that I've put out. I haven't published them or whatever. But they're out there, and me and a good friend of mine are kind of looking at them, and he's helping me tweak them and tell me what I should and shouldn't do. So once I get this down mastered just a little bit more, I'll get it in the computer. I'll hit send, and we'll see what happens.
But it's important for, call it the gun community, to have these, especially as you mentioned, there'll be a lot of local
Hmm.
content going on here, and it's important because a lot of these people are sort of working, but they're under the radar in our community, and
Yep.
they're you mentioned people who are making holsters. There's some people out there that do some excellent work. I mean, really good craftsmen.
Oh yeah.
And you're looking for an opportunity because people don't necessarily know always. I mean, if I want a gun shop, I have a lot of choices in Twin Falls.
Oh yeah.
Forest was one of them, but there's multiple places I could go. Most of us can do that part of it, but then when you're looking for accessories and other things, sometimes you have to expand a bit. Now you may be able to ask the shop owner,
Sure.
but this is an opportunity for people to sit down and actually learn a great deal, not just about training, but about what's what's available out there.
Well, yeah, and there's so much more. There's gear and what's available locally. Support local. And there's some guys. I mean, just like me. I've been doing this for a little over 3 years now, and there's guys just like me that have a day job. They go slog through a day job Monday through Friday, even on Saturday sometimes, and then they go and they ply their craft, whether it be making holsters or Kydex holsters, leather holsters, or whatever it is they may do. They do that in the evenings in their garage, and it's something they like to do, and they sell these. I just want to help everyone out, and I want to have a good show. I want to let people know what's available locally. Well, I lived in Kansas for 6 years, and it's you could find everything down there, and it was really well known. And I don't know why it's not that well known here. I could go there, I could look around, and you could find training classes all the time. Every weekend there was fighting with a shotgun, fighting from a car, clearing a house at night with your spouse. I mean, there are some really cool classes over there, and there's guys that made belts and holsters and did gunsmithing that you knew about. Well, you don't know about those people here.
Do you ever see that episode of Top Gear where they went to there's a racetrack in Virginia, but it's dedicated to shooting arts. And what you do is you drive your car down the track, and what they do is you have to return fire at targets as if you're being fired at while you're driving. And this was the British version of it with
Hmm.
the old cast. They found it is very difficult to do that.
Oh
But
yeah.
again, if you train at it long enough, you can obviously pick. I saw Forrest at Shaw one day,
Hmm.
and he was shooting moving targets. Now that's not easy to do when you first start. But again, this gets back to the practice of it. So
Hmm.
there are these unusual. And I never heard of this place in Virginia. And at the time, I lived maybe 3 hours from that track. And they have a hotel there. You go on vacation,
And you don't know about it.
right? And these are things that it's like, wow, if I'd known about that, I might have gone there earlier, and done something like that.
Well, yeah, and so that's what kind of stuff I want to bring attention to locally, and I'll talk about other stuff too. I mean, there's always something with the Second Amendment you can talk about, something that's going on nationally in the news, whatever we need to, and I'd like it to actually involve into a YouTube channel, involve into a video cast or whatever the vlog or whatever it is they call. See, I don't even know the lingo. I got a lot of work ahead of me.
Just say it's a gun show. That's
Yeah,
all.
their gun show.
We've got more coming up with Todd Eccles. We're talking firearms today and firearms training. We're about 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. He'll share his contact information with us again as well in a few minutes. 41 right now. Bill Cowley with you on Top Story 2 on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Todd Eccles joining us in studio from Patriot Defense this morning. News Radio 13. I got that right, didn't I?
Yeah.
You would think after a few months I'd know what it was. On News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. We're at 44. Firearms discussion today on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. And we were just talking about the podcast Todd is going to be launching and, the potential growth for that, especially in an area where, the joke Keith Thompson from State Police said to me one day on air, he said, "This is Idaho. You assume everybody has a firearm on them. You may not. That might not be if you live in Connecticut or Rhode Island, but here, most of the people carrying them are on the right side of the law,
Right.
and so I think that's something that we have to reinforce with people is that that this is it's not a bad thing to be carrying. It's it is just another tool in your arsenal of defending yourself.
Right. I mean, I want to add to that. You said the gentleman said, "It says Idaho. We assume everyone is carrying." I want to add to that. They need to add, "It says Idaho. I assume everyone's carrying a gun, and I assume everybody knows how to use it."
Yeah.
That's the key right there. If you're going to carry it, know how to use it. And it's just another tool. I don't have one on me today, but I usually carry a pocket knife. Why do I carry a pocket knife? To cut open an orange, to cut open a box, to whatever it is, to cut the balloon off my 3-year-old's wrist,
Yeah.
whatever. It's there. It's a tool, just like a screwdriver, just like a Leatherman. A gun is there. Now, I don't pull it out and use it. And I don't ever want to have to use that firearm. I carry that firearm in case I have to use it. I don't even want to think of the day where I actually have to draw it. Have I drawn a firearm? That's a whole nother show, and I've talked to you about those stories, and maybe one of these days we can get into some of those stories. I've never had to pull the trigger, but it was there, and I'm glad I have it. It had it at the time. It made me feel really good, but it's just another tool. You carry it not wanting to use it, but if you don't have it and you need it, you sure the heck wish you did have it.
I have a friend who told me the story one time. He was driving home from his brother's house or his mother's house, and he had about a 90-minute drive ahead of him, and he realized, I got to go to the bathroom. So he pulled into a familiar gas station, but they were renovating the toilets. So he had to use the port of Johns that were set up out back. And he said while he was in one, he heard tires screaming in on the gravel out back. And he just as he opened the door, there were two guys getting out with pipes, obviously looking to rob him.
Sure.
And he was able to, he said, from where he was, to jump into the passenger side of his vehicle and quickly leap the console and speed off. That convinced him at that point in his life that he needed to be carrying concealed firearm. And this is a guy who probably, it's one and only time in his life anything like that has ever happened. And when he told me where the gas station was, I'd been there. It was in a relatively good neighborhood in a good part of town, but it is somewhat isolated.
Hmm.
And at certain times of day, there's just not a lot of traffic, and it was broad daylight. And so he may never again in his life ever come across a situation like that. And he was smart enough to get out of it that first day. But his belief was, if ever this happens again, I'm going to be ready.
Well, and exactly. I mean, I've got smoke alarms, smoke detectors in my house, and I don't ever want to have to use them. They've gone off when I cook every now and then,
Yes, I know
but
that feeling.
I don't ever want to have to use them. But yet they're there. The same thing with a fire extinguisher. I've got a fire extinguisher in my Scout, but I don't ever want to have to use it. But it's there just in case. I'm going to really wish I had it if I did need to use it. You don't. Evil doesn't pick. I mean, it's not picky. It'll go anywhere. It'll come anywhere. It'll hit you when you least expect it, and that's when bad things are going to happen to you when you least expect it. Criminals are opportunistic. They don't want they don't want to get hurt in the process. They don't want to draw attention to them in the process. So be ready at all times.
Well, it gets back to the randomness of how this can happen.
Hmm.
The other day, I had to buy some office supplies. So I ran to an office supply store and I didn't like the price. So I thought, there's a department store in the same plaza. I'll go down there and see what they have. I walk out the door. And as I'm walking along, a woman comes out of a shoe store and she's dressed as a cat. Now, if you come out of the pet store, I would have thought, okay, I understand. And I thought, that's a little unusual, and you're thinking about this as you're walking along. She's got a tail and she's got ears on. And I walk into the department store, found what I was looking for. And as I came out, it's just one of those days where everything just seemed that, the strangeness of it just continued. And I see a fellow walking across the parking lot and he's
Hmm.
talking. And in the old days, you would have thought this guy's a little touched because he's talking to himself. But we have people who have Bluetooth now. So you think, well, okay, they're talking to somebody and you just don't notice it for a moment.
Hmm.
But then I realized he doesn't have a Bluetooth and he's talking to himself. And I wasn't far away from a laundromat where a couple of years ago when I first moved here and I didn't have laundry access while I was living in a hotel, I was in the laundromat one day when some guy came in and started screaming and yelling just at the top of his lungs that he'd come here from Washington State and everybody else was touched. And so in that particular block, I've encountered these things twice in one day, and I've encountered them in the past before.
Hmm.
But my thought was at the time, the guy who was talking to himself, you don't know when he may just suddenly decide that you're a problem and he's going to attack you. And that's where, again, the randomness of someone coming out a door and encountering somebody like that, it can happen.
Oh,
And we've all had those days.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get into my story. I said I'll save that. That's a whole nother show. That'd be actually be a fun show to do.
Right.
But I'll just touch on it. I was in Kansas. I was way out in the country. I took my young daughter. I don't even know how old she was at the time. 9. My wife's going to kill me for that. But I took her fishing. I took her fishing. Someplace we'd gone fishing before, cat fishing. I came up there. A bunch of people confronted me. A bunch of people confronted me. They looked mean. I didn't know if they were stoned high. I didn't know if they were going to put me in a freezer somewhere. Okay. And I did have to draw my firearm. I didn't have to point it at them. Just drawing it was enough to make them get back in their vehicles and leave. I wasn't expecting that. I was just out for a Saturday morning fishing trip with my daughter. I didn't expect that I was going to have to force her in to my Tahoe, my vehicle behind me, have her crawl across the street or the seats to get in while I kept the door in between me and these people that I thought were going to hurt me or hurt her and have to draw my gun. I didn't think that was going to happen. But you know what? I'm glad I had that gun because there's a firm belief in my mind that just me drawing that firearm and not even getting it raised up and pointed, I'm just me drawing them, just them. They didn't even see the firearm, Bill. They saw my shoulder, my arm move. That was enough to stop them. They got back in their vehicles and they left.
Hmm.
I wasn't expecting that day, but just that. I had it. I was prepared. I think averted a situation there.
Want to mention Todd Eccles is our guest in studio, and if you've got a question or comment for him, he's from Patriot Defense. 736-0300, that's 736-0300. We're 11 minutes away from 10 o'clock, and you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Bill Colley with you as well. I've got to make a quick note, just telling people. Todd, by the way, has he had some diet success himself in the last couple of years, and of course, I was stunned when he told me, 40 pounds you dropped?
No, it was about like 60.
60. And I'm down 60 pounds, and I just want to tell people that it's happened for me. I've got a weigh-in coming up. It might even be more now. I don't know. I can't guarantee that because you do have occasional setbacks. But I've got a weigh-in coming up, I believe, Tuesday of next week. And I have been doing it through the Total Body Transformation System, which is not a yo-yo diet. There's no crazy fad diet involved here. This is through healthy eating and a healthy diet replacement. And it's developed by a company that has been in business now over 20 years with an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau. And a scientific team from universities such as Tufts, Cornell, and Columbia got behind this and said they looked at it and they said it's a healthy way to lose weight. In fact, it is proven to burn 6 times more fat and you'll lose 8 times more weight than normal results from diet and exercise alone. The meal replacement plan, healthier than most of the meals you've already been eating. You can still have a healthy amount of calories, and it costs about the same as buying the groceries that you would be buying that you're going to be skipping with the meal replacement plan. The average participant will drop more than 20 pounds in 60 days, 22 to be the exact number. That's the average, some more. And that happens over a course of 2 months. We wanted to mention it comes with an unconditional full money-back guarantee. If you'd like to know more, you've got to contact Marketing Executive Don Chandler. He's at 208-731-3560. That's right here in Twin Falls. That is 208-731-3560. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Todd Eccles.
Yes, I have, excuse me, I have 2 handguns for concealed carry. One's got a shorter barrel. It's a little smaller model. It's a Smith & Wesson Shield 40 caliber.
Okay.
And the other one's a Smith & Wesson regular size 9mm semi-automatic. And I can carry the 9mm because it's a little bigger. During this time of year when I have a jacket that's 3/4 length, and it doesn't print, and then I carry the smaller one when I just have a really long T-shirt on and it prints a little bit, but not bad, plus the magazine's on the belt. And so you get into your vehicle and you put your seatbelt on. I figured this out not too long ago. You can't get your pistol out of your holster.
Right.
So I've been taking the pistol out after I get in and do it, without drawing attention to myself. I don't wave it around or anything, and I just put it in the other seat, or depending on what vehicle I'm driving, on the seat with a towel over it. So if something happens whenever, I can get to my handgun without taking my seatbelt off and trying to get under the clothing, And
Sure.
So, but I heard you talk one time that you took your pistol and put it on the dashboard of your truck. Were you on a dirt road coming back from a hunting spot or something, or?
I've done that before. Now what I like to do, you can actually buy a holster, or sometimes any holster. They make holsters now that will, I think like Black Hawk Serpas that your handguns will click into.
Right.
You can take those and somehow you can mount them to your console, so they're even better than being on the seat. Because if you were to hit a bump or got in an accident or something and they slide off, you're gonna be looking for it. But if you take it out and it locks right in this holster that you somehow screwed to the console or attached to the console,
then it's visible. And then unless you put a magazine over it or something.
Well, it is, but you can put it right next to the seat, so it's not as visible. I've seen people also mount them right underneath the steering wheel.
Right.
Kind of on the bottom, and it is visible, but not as much.
Right.
I would rather have it not sliding around. That, or there's different ways to carry, and you would still have to remove your shirt, and it's not easy, but it's easier than carrying. You probably carry about 3 o'clock. Is that on your waist?
Oh yeah, right hand.
Yeah.
Right side, yeah.
Appendix carry. If a guy can get used to appendix carry, if you're the right body type for that. I mean, I've never met you before, but if you're that is actually a really good, easy presentation of the handgun when you're driving down the road.
Right.
And because what the problem you're getting at is you're buckling that belt right over the top of your handgun.
Right. Well, I'm thinking of getting the same size holster size, that
Sure
accommodates that size pistol. and somehow putting it to the bucket seat on my right side. So I just reach
There you
down
go.
by my thigh, and there it is.
Yeah, and I know people that have done something like that, or they've got one of them old Chevy pickups, and they got those old seat covers. They got the front pockets in them, and they'll stick it in that pocket. They'll clip a little holster on there, and they'll
Right.
stick it in that pocket down right by their legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I would look into just getting it so it's not going to slide around, so you can grab it. You always know it's going to be there. You're not like, oh my gosh, I hit a bump and I need my handgun. Where it's on the floor over there.
Right.
So,
or
but,
you're wearing it and your seatbelt's on, and
yeah.
you're coming into a parking lot somewhere, and those two guys with the pipes are walking towards you.
Well, and here's another option too, you know, and if you felt like doing it, you know, buy another gun. You could wear one, and you could keep one in your vehicle. Then you don't have to switch them around.
Right.
You've got two. You got one when you get out. You less handling the gun, less chance of a negligent discharge. You know, that kind of thing. That's something to think
I
about
never
as
feel
well.
relaxed when I have a weapon
Yeah.
in my vehicle locked, because
I understand.
I just
Yeah.
what if, you know?
I know.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Thank
Want
you.
to thank you for the call. How about these people? They have these like cell phone holders that sit right on. They're attached to the dash, and I wonder if you could put you could almost Velcro a holster to the dash, and then if you needed it, you can just quickly grab it.
If you got online, I mean, that would be fine too. If you got online and punch this in, you're gonna find all kinds of different ways people are doing it. And there's a ton of good ideas out there. You don't even have to type in the question. You just need to type in, look for a bunch of pictures, and you'll find them.
And talking about having it in your vehicle, I was out doing some, for lack of a better word, bahaing in the desert in Owyhee County one weekend last year. And, you're all alone out there. You're in the middle of nowhere. And I was four-wheeling. And I've been looking at one of these off-road trucks, which they're wide as a Humvee. And this is sort of on my wish list,
Gonna get one.
because I want to go out and do more of this stuff. I enjoy doing, and you drive down a lot of times through the canyon on your way to Jarbidge, and so for people who enjoy that sort of thing, and when the weather's good, you don't want to do it right now.
I'll be doing it. You bring some gas for me, because I'm not going to make it in a Scout. Oh yeah.
But if you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's not necessarily another person that's going to be you're going to encounter, but you may encounter some varmints out there, and you have to have some defense too as well, because in fact this time of year you've got in a lot of places you've got cougars and moose and other animals that are wandering down in the valley because they've been driven out of the mountains. But you may encounter somebody out there in a four-legged form or crawling that's just not too happy with you.
Oh yeah, and you got to be prepared for anything. The animals and even the people. It's not so much here. I'm sure there's some areas here, but when I was in Kansas, that situation I just talked to you about, a lot of people have meth shacks. They have stills. They grow weed out there. You never know where they're going to be, so either on public or private land. So you got to be prepared for everything, because they'll try to run you off. And it's good to have something with you on you in your car. It's just good to be prepared. I mean, that's all this is. Let's all be Boy Scouts and be prepared.
Right. Well, Todd Eccles, before we wrap up today, for people who'd like to get in touch with you at Patriot Defense.
Call me, text me, area code 620-794-6223. You can find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. Go ahead and like the page. I got a bunch of likes over the last couple of weeks, like 80 of them. I love that. Like the page. You can get a hold of me there, message me. I'll put up classes. I advertise there. You'll see everything pop right up in your feed. It's fantastic.
Phone number one more time.
Area code 620-794-6223.
Want to thank Todd for dropping by today. We'll see you next week.
Yep, I'll be here.
And wanted to mention, too, Rush Limbaugh following the news at 10 o'clock right here on News Radio 1310.com and News Radio 1310 KLIX. It goes back to my television days. That's been 15, 16 years. Like I said, the mind is a terrible thing to waste. 43. And God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll let me come back in and do this all over again Monday morning between 8 and 10 o'clock.
The creek's already risen.